If you're a church planter or revitalizer, you know the weight of the calling. You're preaching, shepherding, counseling, discipling, and somehow you're also expected to build a website, manage social media, create a brand, do SEO, and connect with visitors. It's a lot, and you weren't called to ministry to spend your life behind a laptop. At Garden City Media, we understand. We've walked the church planting journey ourselves. That's why our mission is to empower pastors with digital marketing services and consulting, so you can grow your church without burning out. Whether you need a new website, help building your brand, support with communication systems, or a long-term digital strategy, we're here to partner with you in every stage of planting and revitalization. Explore what we can offer at gardencitymedia.com. Let us help you cultivate a healthy, vibrant church community so you can focus on what matters most, loving and discipling your people. From seed to blessing, from tabernacle to temple, from the altar to the city, this is Garden City Media. Visit gardencitymedia.com.
Welcome, everyone, to the Everyday Monks podcast, the parish podcast of St. Benedict's Anglican Church in Rockwall, Texas. It's good to be with you. I am the Reverend Canon Michael Dean Vinson, and I'm happy to be joined today around the podcast table with the Reverend Deacon Timothy Wilson to my left. Deacon, good to see you today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And across from me, of course, is the Reverend Michael Keith Templin, who is assisting priest here at the parish. Father Templin, great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
And, of course, also the Reverend Mark Toombs, a church planting curate here at St. Benedict's. Father Toombs, how are you?
Doing well. Great to be with you guys.
Good to see you. And we are very fortunate and happy to have a special guest with us today and a friend. And I want to welcome Mr. Andrew Dittman to the podcast today. Andrew Dittman, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
So,
All right.
What do you think of the podcast room? I like it.
It's good. Yeah, no complaints. It's April and not August, so
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it can get a little bit hot up here in the summer
does.
months, but we're glad you're with us. So we're going to have a wonderful conversation today with Andrew, and so I'm glad you've joined us for that. So we've just come off, I think, just a very rich and beautiful Holy Week and Easter. Deacon, what's your assessment? How was Holy Week to you this year and Easter? What was your experience?
It was beautiful. The liturgy's beautiful, coming off of Lent into celebration. Our Christ is risen indeed. It was just a wonderful time.
Yeah, amen to that. And I was going to ask you, as a church planting curate, and of course, Father Mark, you're coming in. This is your first year, as ordained clergy in REC. But you kind of ran the gamut, all the services. So I was just curious, kind of, what was your experience just from that standpoint of serving and being involved in all that? I'm sure it was an experience you probably haven't had before.
No, never before. I had participated in some services off and on over the last few years, but to be sort of on this side of things, to be at the altar, to be in the midst of all of the services, the celebration, it's much bigger on the inside, and it is definitely a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Good work.
Well, this was good. There's really no other way to do it than just to do it, and it is a different experience. When you're on the other side, as they say, of the rail.
Yeah.
And before we embark on a wonderful conversation with our good friend, now I know we want to make sure that we talk about the Anglican Way Institute that's coming up. We've talked about that before, but if maybe you do us another short plug, we're going to keep harping on this because we got a really special Anglican Way coming up this summer.
Yeah, what's the dates on that?
You asked me this last time. It's in May.
Yeah, it's the very end of May.
Yeah.
I think the 27th, 8th, and 9th.
That could be right.
But Mark's pulling out his phone. So
yeah, but tell us what's on the docket.
While we get the actual date up, we're doing a conference on the historical books of common prayer. And we're going to cover 1549, 1552, 1559, 1662, and then basically all of the American prayer books.
Right.
Probably skipping 1979. Yeah. And then we'll focus in on the 28 prayer book, and there will be a session on every one of the offices and parts in the 28 prayer book. So.
Yeah. Going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. So do sign up. It's actually a pretty cheap conference for 3 days.
And the level of speakers and just the worship. And speaking of worship, by the way, that's at holycommuniondallas.org.
Yes.
So go to holycommuniondallas.org and you'll find the AWI registration page there.
Yeah.
But Andrew, do you not organize the choirs?
I had at some point. That's how I got into Anglicanism. So a lot of the listeners probably will know Chris Hoyt. He and I were college roommates. So he was Anglican and he was the organist at the cathedral, before it was the cathedral, Church of the Holy Communion. And he was tasked to do the choir and organ for Anglican Way. And at that point, he didn't feel comfortable doing the choir, and so he asked me to do it. And so that was my first experience with the Eucharist in an Anglican church.
Oh, wow.
And so I was working at a Presbyterian church at the time, First Presbyterian Church in Duncanville, a PCUSA church.
Right.
And so, I'd done Anglican Way, the choir for Anglican Way, about 4 or so years, and really great formation. I can't recommend it highly enough. When Chris left, and then Candace came as the organist for the cathedral, she took it over, which was great. She does a good job. So I haven't had the same kind of involvement as I've had, but occasionally I've been asked to write a piece for it, like when Father Jesus and Father Kent Bartel were ordained. I wrote a piece for that. I've done some concerts. When I did one themed on the Apostles' Creed, which was really fun. But unfortunately, it's at the end of May instead of the middle of summer when it used to be.
Right, it used to be in June, yeah.
Now we have school, and so I can't attend as much as I would like.
Oh, shoot.
But also, we're going to talk about some of my work later in this podcast, but the Forward in Faith and the ICCA, the International Congress of Catholic Anglicans, are having an Anglican Way pre-conference.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's pre-conference because it's right before. I'm not exactly sure of the dates, but that.
Yeah. So it starts on Monday and it will wrap up at the same time that the Eucharist begins. So their final Eucharist and our first Eucharist, I believe, are coincide. It'll be the same service for
that's great.
AWI, and you're organizing the music for that, aren't you?
For the previous Eucharist, not the final one.
Right.
For that, we will be, the St. Timothy School will be singing one of the masses from this collection I'll be talking about in the service. So that'll be a chance for some of you to hear it.
Well, that
part of it live.
That may be a reason for me to actually go to I like going to the Forward in Faith part. I'm not always able because it's the day before. There's always lots. Maybe this year we'll try and I didn't know you were going to be doing that. Well, so
y'all are doing an Evensong as well, aren't you? Or did I make that up?
I don't know, because that's on Memorial Day and we don't have school, so it's all kind of up in the air. But I'm used to putting things together at the last minute based on the whims of clergy.
Whoa. The whims, the demands of the world.
The demands of
the kingdom of God, Andrew.
That's right. The powers that be, which are ordained by God.
We are men under authority. But so you've kind of transitioned into the discussion. But I want to start. So we all know you and love you, and we've you and I used to be in the same parish together, and served together for a time. But maybe to just kind of introduce you to the folks in the podcast, so just a little bit about you, your background, kind of give us a little bit of sense of who you are.
Sure. Well, I was born on Easter Monday, which is not insignificant, I don't think, as how it would turn out. My mom sang 2 services in the choir at the Methodist Church, 2 hallelujah choruses, and 8 spicy Chinese food. And then I came out at 2 the next morning.
Is that right? That's how you do
correct.
it, huh?
Yeah. And so that is how I got my start, I would say. I talked already about how I got into Anglicanism, but I was also involved with St. Benedict's when it was just a church plant. I was the choir master, usually in absentia, and I would rehearse the quartet, which were students from UNT, and I would help them pick hymns, and the whole idea was that they would be able eventually to leave the nest and do it on their own. But I was really pleased to be a part of that because, especially for church plants, it's very rare that a musical offering by a church plant can be as excellent as it was here at St. Benedict's.
Can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm glad you brought that up. I when I'm helping and teaching and coaching, I try to instill such a heavy import on the music of the church plant from as early as you can do it. And your investment with the quartet from the very beginning when we started doing evensong as a first kind of public liturgy.
Well, and we even had you out for a few of the
concerts.
That's we did concerts.
And,
but Andrew, you have no idea. I mean, maybe you do. How important that was in the life and the formation of the people that were coming into Anglicanism, even that handful of people. But for the success of moving that church plant along, and I tell church planters all the time, do not discount the value and the import of having beautiful music from the get-go if you can.
Well, it's kind of like, I absolutely agree. It's kind of like in The Magician's Nephew when they're witnessing the creation of the world, and it just so happens that piece of the lamppost got planted and grew very fast.
Yeah.
Whatever you really invest in at the beginning will grow fast comparatively to things that you try and add later on. And so you have to pick and choose what things are your priorities. But I think we can all argue that music ought to be very near the top, especially with all of the invocations in the Psalter about making music, everybody making musical offerings unto the Lord.
Right.
So,
go
ahead, please.
Just a note, if you'll allow it.
Of course I will.
I remember that evensong we did for the 500th anniversary
of the Reformation.
Of the Reformation in that castle.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, that was sweet.
That was fun. I think we sang Jesu meine Freude, one of Bach's great motets.
That was fantastic. Whoa, the good old days, Father Templin.
Ye old good old days.
Yeah,
what was that, 2017?
Sounds like a long time ago.
It was.
So you kind of mentioned you came into the Anglican way in the Reformed Episcopal Church through Chris. What was that journey like for you? I mean, did you just kind of show up and do that, and then was it a period of adjustment? And then in terms of music and tradition, because you were serving at a PCUSA church, but you grew up Methodist, right?
I was baptized in a Methodist church.
Okay.
When I moved I lived in Baton Rouge for a while. I was born in Texas, but I lived in Baton Rouge for the formative years. When we moved back to Texas, my 9th grade year, we started going to a PCUSA church.
Right.
And so that's when I graduated high school. Through college, I went to a PCUSA church, and my first 2 jobs, I got fired from the first one, but the first one I hung on to also was a PCUSA church.
Okay.
And then after that was chapel.
So what was that transition like, both coming into Anglicanism, and then how big of a journey was it for you musically within the music of the church in the Anglican tradition from where you were coming?
Yeah. I would say it was very easy by the grace of God for me, because I noticed that all of the things that I was displeased with in the Presbyterian church, I didn't have any power to change. But all of those things that I was displeased with, in the Anglican Church were non-issues altogether, and the things that I wanted to change, I did have the power to change, and so it was a real alignment. And my wife, who is very faithful Anglican, the headmistress of the St. Timothy School, she was not sold on it at all. She didn't come in kicking and screaming, but she was not. She definitely was not sold. Right. But she. So it was a gradual process for her. But she is now couldn't imagine being anywhere else. It's been a great. She recognized immediately that it was a much better place to raise children. And at that point we had John, who was almost 1.
Yeah.
So, and she also noticed very quickly how it was transforming me, even though I was willing. I wasn't really fighting anything.
So what was going on?
Well, I mean, I would just say that my previous church, it was a good job, and it was good, and my boss was good, and was good to me, and was intent on using my various gifts, but just because of the way that the church was organized and set up, it was just there was only so far that it and anyone in it could grow. So I recognized with the Anglican Church, even though I wouldn't have been able to articulate it, that this was a real fertile ground for spiritual formation, for doing the works of the faith, as well as pursuing a really rich, robust musical inheritance, and adding to it and things of that nature. So, when I came in, there were a few ways that I was still kind of Presbyterian, mostly liturgically. I really liked the Book of Common Prayer, but my attitude was, I really like this, but I would only change probably this, and maybe this and this and this. And then after years there, I realized that I was the one being transformed,
right?
And that I changed my opinion. And now really the main issue that I have with the prayer book is that the birthday blessing is on 2 pages. You have to turn the page, which is really hard.
It
for
is,
the clergy.
unless you've memorized.
597.
And then you just, there's always this awkward pause for that page turn.
Right.
So that's my main complaint these days.
Yeah. That's no small matter.
It's not. It's not.
Andrew, was Ashley lifelong PCUSA?
Yes.
Okay.
We went to the same church. We met in junior high orchestra, and we went to the same church and got married in that church.
Cool.
So yeah, grew up together, went to college together, went to the same church in college. So
you went to University of North Texas.
That's right.
Where you had your undergrad.
And my master's.
And your master's as well. That's right.
Did y'all go to St. Andrews?
Yes, we did.
It's a beautiful church.
Okay.
And to St. Andrew's credit, they actually used the Presbyterian Book of Common Worship. And so that was my first experience with a church that actually followed a rubric. Now, later I found that rubric is not great, but I would say it's really an argument for a rubric being better than a no rubric.
Yeah. That's a good one.
And so one of the other ways that I saw the writing on the wall was when the pastor in one of his sermons mentioned something, and he said BCE instead of BC. Or maybe he said CE instead of AD. And I thought, well, that's strange that and I talked to him after this. He says, well, that's just the academic norm. And I said, well, if the academic norm is not to acknowledge the sovereignty of Christ, then what's the point? What are we doing here? Right. So that was one of the reasons that I thought I should at least find out where the life vests are. Yeah.
Well, good point. So I wanted to mention this. So can you quickly talk about your hand in putting together the Reformed Episcopal Book of Common Praise, the new hymnal?
Yes. Well, I wasn't in a leadership role as far as that. Chris was.
Yeah, but you did a lot of work.
I did do a lot of work. I helped. I provided a lot of arrangements and a few original hymn tunes. And I worked in the proofreading and the kind of the beta testing part of it. Yes, and I'm not very familiar with it because the chapel still uses the 1940 hymnal. But one of the ways that I use it regularly is for its really excellent liturgical index.
Well, I was going to say, because as a church planter, especially, and so I commend this to everybody, and I think the REC hymnal is a fantastic hymnal.
Yeah.
There's no perfect hymnal, right? Just as there's no perfect prayer book, they get close. But that liturgical index is invaluable, especially for, most situations where even a parish, they have one priest, and sometimes that priest isn't even full-time, is bivocational. They may not even have a paid choir master.
Right,
and to be able to,
and probably not a musician.
Well, that's right.
Usually,
and to have that index is fantastic.
Well, really and also according to the REC canons, the music of the parish ultimately falls on the shoulders of the rector or the victor,
right. Yes.
or the vicar.
Yeah, and the Book of Common Prayer says that as well.
The Book of Common Prayer says that as well. So the musician may assist, but ultimately it's the priest who has to sign off on it.
Yeah, so good to know, right? So under the spiritual cure of the rector or the vicar, the hymnody and music of the church falls under the purview of that man. So is there anything else you want to add about your background or any interesting, other than the fact that, we spent time in Croatia one time and you climbed up a mountain and I didn't think you were going to make it down or anything like that?
It was into a hermitage.
Which was and if I would have been in better shape, I'd have done the same thing.
Yeah.
I was jealous of you, actually.
Yeah, no, that was fun. It was surprising how well that wood held up under the weight of all the rat poop that was up there.
I didn't think it was going to hold. I was prepared for whatever was going to happen, but praise God you survived that. We had a good trip.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So we're going to have a really multifaceted conversation. We're going to talk about Andrew's Kyrial that he has produced out of the Chapel of the Cross in Dallas, where he serves as choir master and also you teach at the school and do a whole host of other things there at the Chapel of the Cross. But we're going to talk about that. It's available on CD. It's also available online and YouTube. And I think what we'll be able to do is put some links to some things that'll direct folks in this post in the comments. But we have some questions. So who wants to go? No, we have some questions from some audience members as well. So do you want to just jump into some? Or?
Well, why don't let Andrew lay the groundwork for his project, and then we can kind of
let's do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll just talk about what a Kyrial is.
Yes.
So a Kyrial, Kyrial, and sometimes it has an E at the end of it, is a collection of sung mass settings, which are the things that you normally would sing at a service of Holy Communion. So the Kyrie, the Sanctus, the Creed, the Agnus Dei, the Gloria in Excelsis, the Lord's Prayer, as well as some of the responses. And so the reason that you would need multiple mass settings is so you don't, so you can keep liking the ones that you do all the time. And you can introduce some liturgical variety while still keeping along with the rubrics from the prayer book. So I started this. I didn't set out to write a Kyrial, but I started actually. So the Chapel of the Cross. This may be a little bit long-winded.
That's okay. Go ahead.
We're here for it.
They inherited the tradition of saying Holy Communion on first Sundays of the month and feast days, high feast days, and morning prayer all of the others, which is, as far as I know, from sort of the circuit riding days where one priest would be in charge of several parishes and couldn't bilocate despite his best efforts. And so, but then that, because of, I guess, poor catechesis, that became the norm, the expected norm, even when churches had priests there every Sunday. And so, so we were committed to, by the bylaws, but also just by what we thought was the right thing to do, we were committed to saying morning prayer, daily, including Sundays. But we also wanted to add the weekly Eucharist that would be the completion of morning prayer, and in order to more fully live out the prayer book life. Additionally, a lot of our new members were expecting Holy Communion to be said weekly, which of course is a good thing. And so we had to deal pastorally with how can we best do that. And so what we decided to do was have what we called at the time a supplemental communion service after the full morning prayer, even including the postlude, where the morning prayer service would be entirely unchanged, which was to show, but also because we intended to do this, that we aren't planning on changing anything, which pastorally is often a very good thing to really emphasize. And so we had, after the postlude, the only thing that changed was that the altar was already set up for Holy Communion.
Right.
So during the postlude, they would extinguish the office candles and light the Holy Communion candles. And then we would have the communion service that followed that wouldn't duplicate the various things that already would have been done in morning prayer. So we wouldn't have said a confession again. We wouldn't say a creed again. And we wouldn't pray for the whole state of Christ Church, because all of that had been done in some form in morning prayer. So in order to help conserve some time and be charitable to our parishioners. But also we decided that we would do it a cappella, so it wouldn't seem like we were devoting the same kind of energy to this service. And so since we were doing it a cappella, I had to deal with the question of what do we sing? Because the Willen, which is great, the Willen service doesn't work a cappella. It really relies on having that very fine organ accompaniment. And the Marbeck service, which I also like, would work, but I didn't want to get tired of it. I wanted to keep on liking it. And so, and also there wasn't a harmonized version of it. And I thought it was important for me that if we did an a cappella service, that we would be able to sing it in harmony, which maybe was selfish, but at any rate, and then that also coincided with when the then deacon, but now Father Templin and Veronica were to be married.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so I thought, this is a good, the best muse is a deadline. And so that was a great deadline for me to do the first part of what eventually would become the Kyrial, the what is known by some Anglicans as the Missa Marialis.
The fourth communion
which is the fourth communion service in the 1940 hymnal. It's called the Missa Marialis because, and this may be getting really into the weeds, because in the of all the various mass settings, it was the one that was appointed for Marian feast days. So Marialis is why it gets that name. So I started with that one and finished it. And then we were singing that, and it was working well, and the congregation enjoyed it. They enjoyed it singing a cappella in harmony.
Yeah, it was good.
And so then after that, I looked in the Liber Usualis, which is kind of like the Latin Book of Common Prayer, but it's more of an encyclopedia, more of a reference point than something that would actually have been used in the liturgy regularly, at least. And I looked at the Mass that was appointed for Sundays after Epiphany and Trinity, where the altar linens would be green. And I was noticing that the melodies for this on regular Sundays was a lot easier than the one that we had been doing. And I said, well, I mean, if I'm going to do another one, this seems an easy one to do. The Gloria only has a range of a sixth.
Can you sing it? How's it go?
Yeah, the Kyrie is None of these melodies on their own are too difficult. That's one of their great strengths is that of course, they're beautiful, but they're also very doable. And you don't have to have a high degree of musical training to do them. But even among these masses, that was one of the easier ones. And so I said, this seems like the obvious next candidate for this. And so then I had one for Christmastide and Marian feast days.
Right.
And then I had one for Sundays where the altar's green. And I said, well, what's the next obvious thing? The next obvious thing was Eastertide. And so Mass 1 was the one that was appointed for Eastertide. And when I say appointed, this is according to the Roman rite, from which the Anglican rite gets a lot of its traditions, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I was trying to figure out why various masses were appointed for various feast days or various kinds of Sundays.
Yeah, what was the rationale, right?
And what was the rationale? And it was more of just an observation that I made that, like, for instance, the regular Sundays, that's not going to be quite as elaborate. But the Kyrie for Eastertide is interesting because the melody of it is a rising melody over the Kyrie. Yeah, it rises from the first Kyrie and then to the Christe, and then by the time the final Kyrie comes around, it's almost like a different piece entirely. So, when I'm researching these various things, this becomes obvious. So after the Eastertide one, the next thing I did was for Sundays during Advent and Lent, which in the Liber Usualis doesn't have a Gloria in Excelsis, which works obviously well because in the Anglican Church we also don't usually sing the Gloria in Excelsis in Advent or Lent.
That's right.
We sing something else, or we maybe sing nothing at all. And so then I had basically the regular, all of the various bases covered, but then I couldn't really help myself. Then I wanted to make sure that all the various medieval modes were represented in the melodies, and I wanted other alternate ones. And then I also wanted to harmonize the Marbeck that we talked about earlier, John Marbeck, who wrote this, his setting of the service of Holy Communion in...
That's the one we use.
That's
the one that you instilled when we first started.
Yes, and
1550, right?
1550 at the behest of Thomas Cranmer, who asked him to write it using only one syllable per note, and so it's entirely syllabic.
What was the thinking behind that? Do you think?
It was a reaction to the hyper melismatic. Various chants where it was difficult to hear what was being said, and so it was a clarity. Now, Winfred Douglas, who I bet we'll talk about more later in this podcast, he has a funny thing to say about that. It's that Cranmer had a good intention, like many priests.
True.
He himself was a priest. Winfred Douglas was a priest and a church planter. Should be said.
Interesting.
And he was the
Community of the Resurrection. That he was.
some church in Evergreen, Colorado is where he planted, but he was the canon in Fond du Lac in Wisconsin.
Is that right?
And he was the main editor of the 1940 hymnal. And also did the choral service, from which we get a lot of our chanting patterns for the collects and the prefaces and things like that.
And he was the Fourth Communion service, the Marialis, right?
Yes, and that comes from his Kyrial back in 1933, which I'm holding in my hand, a really small, elegant evergreen cover. Let's see, where were we going with this? He, so he, I don't remember exactly where we're going with this, but
just keep going. You're doing
we were talking about Murbeck.
Yes,
single notes.
So he was saying that music doesn't really work that way. You can't have these edicts that define what music. Now, I like the Murbeck. I don't share Douglas's opinion here, but it does make sense what he was saying. At any rate, so I decided to harmonize the Murbeck service as well. Although the other one that I did right after the Sundays in Advent and Lent was Father Melton at Christ the King in Atlanta, who worked with me when he and I were both at chapel. He wanted to do a funeral service for children who died in the womb, either through miscarriage or abortion or other things. And I said, well, this would be a great opportunity. He had me go out there and design a service. And so I said, well, we can do the Mass for the Departed. So that was one of the other ones that I did. And in the Agnus Dei for that, instead of saying, grant us thy peace or have mercy upon us, instead it says, grant them rest, grant them rest, grant them rest eternal or everlasting. And so, which is interesting because in the prayer book, it says, then shall be sung in a hymn. Yeah. And we pretty much always do that on Agnus Dei. I don't know of anybody who does something else, but perhaps the reason for that rubric and being non-specific is for those Requiem services, where you could have that alternate text for the Agnus Dei. But anyway, also back on Douglas's Kyrial. So I used the 1940 hymnal for the melody for the for that first Mass that I harmonized. But I noticed in the Gloria in Excelsis that his version, when it says art most high in the glory of God the Father, the word high goes to the lowest note.
Really?
Which is unusual, and that caught me off guard. And so I looked that's when I started looking at the Liber Usualis, where he got his that's where he adapted his version from, his English version from. So I was trying to see what they did in the Latin, and noticed that on the word altissimus, which is most high, it did go up. Now, Winfred Douglas isn't really wrong, because I looked at the various other Gloria in Excelsis settings, and it doesn't always follow the text like that.
So what does it sound like? Can you sing that? That would be really odd.
Sing both of them side by side.
Yeah, because
and let's see your change.
Yeah, let me pull
typical
it up
text usually, Christological text or glorified text usually goes up in scale. Glory to God in the high.
Right. Yeah. Glory be to God on high. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily go that. That's called text painting. Whenever what happens in the text is also what happens in the music. Like for instance, in the Beatles, "Drive My Car," and they go beep beep, beep, and they sing it in a harmony that sounds exactly like a car horn, or similar things like that. All right, here's the what he has for the Gloria in Excelsis. Art most high in the glory of God the Father. So that was his.
So he went down,
He went down on high, which I thought was weird. And so then when I going from the Liber Usualis, let me pull it up here. I should know it right off the top of my head, but I don't want to tempt fate.
Oh, don't do that.
So, yeah. There it is. Okay, so it says, Thou, let's see, is that right? For thou only art
So why did he go down?
I don't know. I mean, it's whenever you adapt, and I look forward to asking him next time I get the opportunity. But whenever you adapt something from Latin into English, it doesn't. The languages are built so differently that you have to change certain things. You know, sometimes the Latin has a lot more syllables than the English, and sometimes it's the other way around.
So stresses can fall differently.
Stresses can fall differently.
Emphasis fall different.
And so, I mean, I just chalk it up to he had to make a call, and he decided to go a certain way, which you know, it's fine. It's not unsingable, but from then on, I decided that I would use the Liber Usualis as my primary source, and not his own Kyrial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many in the end? How many settings did you actually compose? That's
11.
on your CD. So you have 11.
11. That's right.
And it basically covers the whole liturgical year.
There's there's several for feast days, but then also the ones for the regular Sundays throughout the year, and then for funerals, and then the Marbeck.
So do you use the Marbeck at the chapel?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yeah, we've sung, I would say, let's see, of all of the masses, there's 11 of them. I think we've done 9 so far.
Wow.
Maybe 8, but we're going to do the 9th on our school trip, and then we're going to do that same one for that Forward in Faith conference.
Are y'all going to sing those at churches y'all are visiting, or?
Well, we're only going to sing one mass,
Okay.
Which would be Sunday morning. So for the other ones, we'll do evensong.
Yeah.
That'll be at St. Mark's in Philadelphia with Father Jason Patterson.
Oh, that's
Very
fantastic.
Cool. That'll be awesome.
So do you have any Kyrial questions? Do you have anything that's come to mind? Because I know that I saw your wheels spinning over there while Andrew was sharing.
I'm soaking it in. This is cool stuff. I would just say, so as a choir master of incredible talent, how have you found translating this into a parish choir setting? Has it been easy? Do the people pick up on singing these chants, or is it something you guys have really had to work on with? Obviously, some are easier.
I would say
settings
short
than
answer
others.
is yes.
Okay.
To all of those. You know, our tradition in general is one that requires a lot of effort and also rewards even more so.
Yes.
A lot of effort. And so I think by and large, people have found themselves working hard to sing this and make it beautiful, and they have enjoyed the hard work. My hope is that these will be able to be sung in harmony by congregations, not just parish choirs. But yeah, that brings another point, because I wanted this Kyrial to be as universally usable as possible. So we have, so the way that I harmonized it, you could obviously do it because it's Gregorian chant. You can do it just melody only and transposed to a range that suits generally everybody's voice types. And there's nothing lost by that because the melodies do stand alone without any harmonized harmony added to it. And then also you could do it to where you could sing in harmony. You could do it either with organ accompaniment or without. Generally, we've done it without, but we have done it with organ sometimes. And furthermore, if it's done in harmony, unlike some hymns, if you do them a cappella, where the melody sung, if it's sung down the octave, will drop below the bass line. That kind of messes with the harmony and the voice leading. So I made sure that wouldn't be a problem.
The case,
if men in the congregation were uncomfortable singing harmony, that if they sang the melody, then it wouldn't mess with it.
Right.
So to keep it as universally as possible and accessible to whoever would like to beautify their worship in this way.
So I want to talk about, are these, so again, a lot of people that are on the journey into Anglicanism, a lot of people that listen to this podcast, it's like, when you're arranging this, are you arranging it for organ?
Well, no. And no.
How important, and just generally speaking, because a lot of people coming into like a parish like ours, it's like, oh, the organ.
If I said that I was arranging this for organ, then I imagine that there would be several organists egging my house shortly thereafter.
Well, I don't want to get you in trouble for sure.
No, and because there is the organ harmonization for the Marbeck in the hymnal. Right. And I wasn't, and it's good. I have no issues with it. There's no problems with it. But if I just said, well, I'm just going to make a choir version of this harmonization, it wouldn't work because organ is not the human voice. And it just works differently. And so I wanted to make sure also that the soprano, altos, tenors, and basses all had good, interesting parts. And whereas the organ harmonization for the Marbeck in the hymnal is very static, because it's not written to be sung in an interesting way. So that was one of my goals, is that no matter what part you're singing, it will still
was the idea on that originally that pretty much any church could sing common prayer. I mean, because the cathedrals they had more elaborate musical settings, didn't they? Or at that time, or were they simply they didn't just all switch to?
I can't speak, and I know that the level of church music, even in England, it wasn't always high and it wasn't always low. It sort of ebbed and flowed.
Yeah.
I know that there were, for instance, there's not very many musical settings of the Venite after the Renaissance. And I don't know why that is. I think it's a problem. But also, there weren't a lot of settings of the masses to be sung in English after the Renaissance as well.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wish I knew more about why that is. But, and then of course in the Oxford movement, then they started recovering these older traditions, and they started reintroducing things and then composing new things like this. But yeah, as far as what was done when, I'm not super sure about all of that.
I have a question. Actually, comes from my son Elir, which he loves you and your work.
Yes.
But he was asking, what are the essential ingredients of a piece of music or chant that makes it distinctly Anglican as opposed to Roman or Lutheran or what have you?
That's a good question.
I would say that's probably more of a gut feeling. Does the congregation like it? Does it seem to be moving people the right direction spiritually, pastorally? It's hard to quantify specifically what goes on there. Now there is the Roman rite, which is the Liber Usualis is from that, and then there's also the Sarum rite, which is the Salisbury. And there's definitely different variations, but I don't know that anybody would be able to hear a Sarum chant and its corresponding Roman chant next to each other and say which one is which.
Yeah.
It's mostly just different regional variations. Sometimes the Sarum chant is more florid and more active, and sometimes the Roman is more active.
But would you say that, is there something, because I think what's behind that is there something that's distinctly Anglican in its chanting, its service music, as it's coming out of the Sarum, Latin Mass in England, Reformation into English? I mean, is there something distinct about the Anglican service music, or just, you know what I mean?
This might sound a little bit too simple, but English.
Yeah.
Well, there's that.
I mean, that's, it's the prayer book English that was arranged musically in order to fit the liturgy of the prayer book.
Yeah, I mean, even the Germans were still, I mean, the service and the hymns and the scripture readings were in German, but they were still using the Kyrie in Greek and the Gloria in Latin and the Sanctus.
Yeah, sometimes there were German versions of those.
Oh, were there? Okay.
And the Greek for the Kyrie and the Latin for the other ones. Martin Luther had the vision that they would be able to sing a service in Latin one day and German another, and I don't know if he would have stopped there, but
the distinctly Anglican thing, which actually is a really good answer, is that it's English.
Yeah, I mean that's English and rooted in tradition.
Right.
And I think one of the strengths of the Anglican Church is the ability to say, that's a really good thing. Now it's ours. Kind of a Anglican Christian imperialist view, with none of the negative connotations.
Of course not.
Right.
Well, I mean, you have the great like Anglican choral chants, like the settings you'll hear at evensong at choirs overseas or whatever. But what you're recovering here is really the pre-Reformation music and adapting it for common prayer, which not a lot of that had happened, right? I mean, if it had been a little bit here and there, or even with Canon Winifred Douglas's. I mean, he took some from this setting and some from that setting, but you've gone and done the full services.
Well,
and
I'm not a scholar in the way that Douglas was. He went and trained with the monks at Salem, who were really responsible for a lot of the revitalization in the Roman Church of these traditions that had, by and large, just gone away. They were just collecting dust in various libraries, and they used these sources and compiled them into the Liber Usualis, not just the Mass settings, but also the various antiphons and graduals for all of the various different feasts, major and minor. And so what you ended up is this book that's about 3 inches thick that has more pages than the Bible. And if you're looking at it, you're thinking, yeah, I can see why there would be a Reformation. But it wasn't used quite like that. Right. It was more of just an encyclopedia, a compendium. But and the way that they came up with for singing this is not necessarily the only way. There are different ways of chanting Gregorian chant that are more ornamented. The analogy that I use is the way that the national anthem is sung in various different ways. If you have a soloist at the Super Bowl halftime show, it's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to be a lot more of a journey.
Sure, probably
they'll be
Whitney Houston or whoever.
Yeah, well, best case scenario, Whitney Houston, and worst case scenario, any number of other people. But
who's the guy that got the words wrong? The Olympic guy?
I don't know, but
he was
probably
a
lot of
runner.
Carl Lewis.
Carl Lewis. Yeah, Carl Lewis got the words wrong.
It's interesting, and we don't have to get too deep on this, but in my mind, the national anthem should be a quote unquote congregational thing, and usually what. In these sorts of situations, it's one person singing it in a way that it is impossible to follow them. And meanwhile, everybody else just sort of puts their hand on their heart and has their mouth somewhat open.
Mumbles.
And I don't think it's a really great testament. I mean, you could argue that it's weird to have a national anthem at a sports event anyway. But So there are very ornamented ways of singing Gregorian chant, but they don't work congregationally. assuming, as we do in the Anglican tradition, that the default needs to be congregational participation, and maybe occasionally a choir will sing the text that everybody already knows by heart and by soul and by mind and by strength,
like the creed,
right? And not the Apostles' Creed. The Apostles' Creed
Nicene.
by the prayer book says it always shall be sung by everybody, the same as the Lord's Prayer. But the Nicene Creed could be sung by the choir alone, and any of the other parts of the Holy Communion could be sung by the choir alone. But we definitely lose something when it's only ever sung by the choir. And on the other hand, we gain more when it's normally sung by everybody and everybody knows the text. And then the choir sings a version of it that the congregation couldn't do. But in hearing it, they are maybe drawn to a particular way that a composer sets a certain line of text that makes it to where you can further meditate on the incarnation, for instance, that in a way that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to do.
Right. So draw them deeper into the worship of God.
So it's really a both and. You want congregational participation, and occasionally you might branch out into something that's more robust and more involved. But because of the regular congregational participation, it makes their experience not passive, but active and in just a different way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Father Timms, do you have a question that's been stirring over there, just a point of conversation?
Yeah.
What's going on over there?
Two things. One is first a comment and then a question. The comment is, I love that you're so congregationally minded. I grew up in the Churches of Christ, which were committed to a cappella singing. We did a lot of hymns, 4-part harmonies, and I really miss those days. I've gone to other places where music was more contemporary, and I felt like we lost something by getting away from that, because then it becomes more performative and the congregation's not always as engaged. So I love what you're doing with that and appreciate the efforts you're putting into those things. A question that has come up in my family and with some of the people that I've come to know over the years as a pastor and a friend has to do with music itself, or instrumentation. Question about why the organ versus, say, an acoustic guitar or a bit of a drum or a piano or something like that. Why the shift, and why is there often among Anglicans you might find a bit of an attitude against, a negative attitude against those other things, when so many people are accustomed to using that kind of instrumentation in the West, or especially in American evangelicalism. Would you like to speak into that?
Yes. I mean, this sounds like it could be an entirely another podcast series, but
well, we're always looking for ideas.
That's good. Well, first of all, let me tell a story about one of the things that happened in the church that I was at, First Pres Duncanville, before I became Anglican. My pastor there, she was very intent on having the music really go with whatever the lessons were. Now, granted, she always picked whichever lessons there were, but it was still good training for me to be able to learn how to match them. And we had a blended service. I always called it a pureed service. And where we would have these so-called praise songs in the beginning, and then everything after that we would sing completely devoid of praise.
What would that be?
No, I mean, I don't know, just whatever.
An unpraised song?
Unpraised, that's right. Praise and unpraised. Praise and insult.
Shots fired.
But I was, she asked me, well, what about this one thing? I mean, she was doing this thing on the Book of Kings, and if you're looking for music that goes along with all the various carnage that happens in the
what about Zadok?
You're gonna find you're not gonna find a lot just hanging off the tree.
Sure.
And so I said, well, there's this one that I had written, I played it for her, and she said, it just doesn't sound contemporary. And I said, well, I wrote it yesterday.
That is contemporary as it comes.
So I don't know how much more contemporary I could make it.
Right.
I could make up something on the spot, but I can't guarantee that it'll be this good.
Did she mean it wasn't?
And what she meant was it wasn't
emotive?
pop. Yeah, pop is a better word.
Radio play.
Yep. And so that's just a funny story about that. But I would say the organ is an excellent music for the liturgy because of the various dimensions and musical colors that can be used to augment worship and music and singing. That can be adjusted for whatever the liturgical season or the context. And it can all be done really well by one person. Whereas, a guitar is kind of I guess an acoustic guitar at least is pretty monochromatic in terms of the kinds of colors that it can do. I mean, you can finger pick it and you can strum it, and if the Spirit moves you, you can whack it against the floor. I've seen that happen.
Have you really?
Not in worship.
Honky Tonk Man, remember him?
Yeah, but it doesn't have the complexity.
It doesn't have the
emotion.
And the thing is that worship is for God, and God is complex. He's also simple. He's multifaceted, many things, and also one thing. And so our attempts at worship, which will be inadequate and feeble at our best, should at least attempt to not describe, but show the nature of God in the act of worship. And
I never thought about that perspective on that, actually.
Yeah, I haven't either.
That's good.
And so that's why I think that the choral harmonies, the organ, is a great default. And of course, you can go further than that. Bach's cantatas were written for orchestra as well as all the various instruments. But then that obviously became more involved because you have more people that are needing to do it and high skilled. So there's nothing wrong with having a lot of people who are working together as a team to make beautiful worship together. But I would say that also guitars don't work unless they're amplified, unless you're in a very small space. And then if you have, it's often used as a brute force instrument, I would say. And instead of a really refined thing, it's reduced to this chord, that chord, this chord, and then in a lot of the praise songs, however many chords is also very limited. 4 might be a lot.
That's true.
Whereas in a regular hymn that we would sing in harmony, might have you wouldn't even think of it as how many chords there would be. You would just think of it as singing a really nice bass line paired with a nice tenor line that happens to result in these great harmonies. But once you start doing it with a guitar, it's very much a square peg, round hole situation. And there are churches that try and do hymns with guitars, but inevitably they will always discover, whether they realize it or not, that this is not the right tool for the job. Because it's just, you either have to be just prodigiously, geniusly talented at guitar in order to be able to do this, or you have to take shortcuts and shortchange the intrinsic beauty and craftsmanship of whatever hymn it is. And then also, I would say just another, and I don't want to come off as being really hateful about contemporary music, because pop Christian music, I would say, even though I don't like it myself, I'm not ready to just write it off entirely. I think that it may have its place, but the way that it's executed is not designed almost all the time for congregational participation.
Yeah. You get that national anthem with Whitney Houston and everybody standing in the stadium.
You have this melody that's written really for a solo voice, that's written too high for most men to sing and too low for most women to sing. It's in that sort of androgynous register. And then also you have pretty complex rhythms. One of the great virtues of hymns is that in 97% of the time, we have the same number of syllables per line. So it's you know exactly where your syllables line up. And of course, we don't assume that you are a Philistine, and so we give you the hymnal that has the music notation to where you can see exactly where it lines up. Whereas, on the PowerPoint, if you're lucky, you get the bouncing ball, and you just have to kind of guess as to what the notes are or what the rhythms are. So there's that androgynous register. There's the rhythm discrepancy from verse to verse, also the complexity of the rhythm. And then you have, like I said, it's sort of a blunt force instrument. And so you don't have that range of I would even say emotions, which is interesting because a lot of the praise and worship stuff, they really play on try and manipulate human emotion, but they have such a small palette to do so. I mean, our service is not without emotion. We're supposed to use feelings and our intellect and our bodies to the greater glory of God, and but we're not supposed to. And we also can benefit spiritually by hearing a hymn sung well, but the hymn is not designed to make us feel a certain way. That may happen, but then also another thing is that you don't have, once you get to Holy Week, and we're talking about total abandonment and the worst kind of suffering. What are you going to do? And what song are you going to sing that talks about God being why hast thou forsaken me? Deep were his wounds and red. And there might be some text. I'm thinking of how deep the Father's love for us, which by the way is not a contemporary text. But even so, to have it in I think it's a very good, that one's a good example of contemporary pop music that can be really used in the liturgy. And I've done it well at the church with organ and choir, just as an offertory anthem. And it works that way because it's a good singable melody. It doesn't go too high or too low. And, but, for instance, holy Jesus, how hast thou offended?
Yep.
'Twas I crucified thee. I denied thee. I mean, you don't see, and I'm not super familiar, so maybe I should be careful, but I haven't seen, similar sentiments expressed in that idiom, which just seems very narrow.
It's fantastic.
I have an idea that as you were speaking, Neil Postman popularized something that Marshall McLuhan had said, that the medium is also the message.
Yes.
So I've often wondered the consequences of, a lot of concert style music as opposed to the way that we treat traditional hymns and the such. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that at least among, let's just say more Reformed traditions, a lot of their emphasis is on the theology itself. For instance, also going back to how deep the Father's love for us, there's the line which the Father turns his face away, which some people have theological problems with because, for one, he didn't. But then you could also argue the why hast thou forsaken me? That's a kind of a poetic take on that. But a lot in those circles, if there's any hymn that has poor theology in the text, they're very quick to say, we don't want any part of this. So for that reason, because I would say good harmony is good theology. Because harmony, by its definition, means it's unified in multiplicity. And if it's also good, then that's its own theological statement. And I would say that for most people, it's much easier to sniff out bad theology in the text than it is in the actual craftsmanship of the music.
Wow, that's a great point.
And so the impetus then becomes on composers and performers to hold themselves to a really high standard for what kinds of music they're going to let people listen to. And so pop artists, I would hope, and I talk to my students about, I compare and contrast popular music with them. And when I say popular music, I'm not talking about music written recently, but like from the golden age of popular music, the 20s through the 40s, I would say, as well as the Beatles, and other things like that, where this is a really good example. And somebody who knows a lot about music, when they listen to it, they can still get a lot out of it. And there's other music where if you know a lot about music and you listen to it once, you're like, I get it. I don't need to hear it again. There's nothing in this that rewards repeated listening on a musical level. So I would hope that musical craftsmen would be very careful about what kind of music that they let other people listen to, as well as bring them along to help improve their listening ability. So, as a choir master, mostly people will think that I direct the choir and I plan the music. But I think that my job lies far beyond that, which is I need to bring the whole parish along and give them and let them all have an access to their great, rich, abundant musical inheritance. And so we'll talk about, I'll make sure that they know, are aware of good musical concerts that they could go to. Or sometimes I'll do Sunday school or a Lenten series where I'll speak about a particular piece and how to listen to it, and what to listen for, and things like that can help people develop that, we'll call it muscle, in order to get people to just to know better who God is by learning about this aspect of His creation.
And speaking of, because I think this is maybe one of the most important aspects of church music, hymnody, etc., is what is it doing spiritually for the people gathered in worship of God and the formation of their souls in devotion and love of Christ. I mean, do you have any thought? I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because you've been around, and we've all been out of different traditions, and experienced different music styles, etc., and now as Anglicans. But I mean, do you have any thoughts on this, just from a pastoral standpoint, or just your thinking on the implications of the music on a person's soul?
Well, I'd like to say something about this. Over the years, I've wrestled with Luther's statement that music is the handmaiden of theology. You would hear that. And I think that what we see happening in the broader Christian community is that music is no longer treated as a handmaiden. She's become the master of the house. And in many places, music is treated more like a sacrament than anything else. So if you were to remove that, I mean, you would just be left with a sermon, because many places don't even have sacrament. And that's a concern I have. It's not even so much about the style, the aesthetic. I mean, all of that is a concern as well. But it's the fact that music has been thrust into the center of the life of a church, and it's in worship. I mean, I've heard people describe their worship service. They'll say, we worshiped, and now we're going to pray, and now we're going to have a sermon or a reading. The worship is only the music. And so all of that's a concern to me. But what you're saying... It's the difference between singing Mass and singing during Mass. Yeah. So I love what you said about the complexity, how we're bringing that back to God as a reflection of His image in us, and also this ties in. I mean, I've heard you say this, Father Michael, a gazillion times, that we worship in the beauty of holiness, right? I mean, that's an echo of Scripture, but I mean, to say that that's at the center of what we do, the way you're describing music and singing and those things really, in my mind, puts that in bold relief that this is about worshiping in the beauty of holiness.
And I think, I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. And I wanted to talk more about Luther because he was an excellent musician himself. And he definitely really, we've been talking about church planting. I mean, in Luther was in a lot of ways a church planter. And we don't have to get into all of the various controversial things, but in the realm of music, I think he was really, really wise and really prescient as far as how he saw it as being invaluable to the ministry and to spiritual formation. I mean, he wrote various hymns, A Mighty Fortress, The Savior of the Nations Come, which were, well, Savior of the Nations Come was a Latin adaptation, not unlike what I'm doing with the Kyrial, but he knew, or at least he imagined, that all of his movement would cause great strife and war. We had the 30 Years' War and all these various wars of religion, and how well he took care of his flock by giving them a mighty fortress. Let goods and kindreds go, this mortal life also. The body they may kill, God's truth abideth still. And to have that, if that was a poem, it wouldn't have stuck the same way. It wouldn't have been internalized in the same way as it was with that great melody that he wrote, which, by the way, is way more hip than we sing it today. A mighty fortress is our God. Very syncopated, kind of angular, very much kind of a battle cry, spiritual warfare and otherwise. But also, that I was talking about the Anglican way and how that was one of the doorsteps into Anglicanism for me. I didn't grow up singing or saying the Nicene Creed at all. I knew about it. I remember one time in the Methodist Church where the pastor decided that we were going to do the Nicene Creed, and I remember looking over at my side and saying, "Oh, some people know this, but I don't know it." But we sang it to the Marbeck in Anglican way, and so I had 4 times to sing it. 4 services, 4 Holy Communion services, and we sang it 4 times. And by the 3rd time, I had it. It was memorized.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so the music is great for that. Obviously you hear these stories about people in the nursing home who don't even remember their children's names, and then they hear a piece of music from their childhood or something like that, and they immediately start to participate just reflexively. And so it's a great mystery and a great tool for that kind of spiritual formation, to have those kinds of words and married to the music, and therefore accessing all of those portals to memory and experience and other things like that.
Did you have something, Father Templin?
I'll just bring up some personal experience, I think, and
that'd be great.
Kind of piggyback off of what Father Mark was asking about. I grew up in, especially in like youth, it was really centered in whatever was contemporary praise and worship. And so I did the whole band thing, guitar, and so one note, and then I'll bring up the second. But, what we were constantly trying to achieve with the guitar, volume pedal mixed with a reverb and delay, and you're trying to create an ambient kind of landscape or a pad, as they talk about it nowadays. And really what I found out, when I finally got into liturgical music, is we're just really poorly trying to do what an organ or the human voice can actually do in like a Gregorian setting.
And also our building. We're trying to digitize our space,
right,
in order to replicate good architecture.
Yes, you've got a cathedral delay or a cathedral reverb setting and some delay to
that's a really
provide
good point
all
too.
of that echo and swell and this, that, and the other, which you would just have with good architecture and an organ. But secondly, going back to the conversation, maybe this was a few discussion points ago, but my real first introduction into Anglicanism, I went to Church of the Incarnation, which I know you've been to Evensong there, as most of us probably have. And I had never been to a service. It was choral Evensong, and we didn't really do anything. Neil say a few things together, but the choir did the service. But I remember like just being immersed in worship there, just listening. It was so otherworldly to anything I had ever really experienced in real life. And I think there's something to be said about that as well, that you don't have to be speaking or singing to be worshiping. And when something is done so beautifully, maybe even if you're not even understanding the text of what they're singing, now you can read along, but some of those harmonized psalms and this, that, and the other, it's sometimes hard to understand, but it's so beautiful it causes you to worship. And the church, there's just such a rich history that we have that we shouldn't so readily give it up.
And it's also
music.
So very easily accessible in terms of anybody that has an internet connection and YouTube can find thousands of really excellent, beautiful settings of the Magnificat.
Right.
That are Anglican. I mean, and there's thousands more that are not Anglican, Roman, Latin settings of the Magnificat. There's German Magnificat.
Sure.
But there's all of this great tradition that we all as Anglicans should be making sure that we are aware of and know, not only just to increase our own understanding of the tradition, and as well as increase our ability to hear well what's going on, how composers might set a text, but also to give us an imagination as a parishioner, as a church planter, to say, this has been done before.
Yes,
we can do it again.
I like that.
We have a way. We have a direction. We have kind of a North Star. Of course, Jesus is the North Star, but whenever you're going the right way, it will have to be beautiful. And so to help light the fires of the imagination, it would be really imperative that all of us know what our tradition is and can be, and to have some sort of vision to not necessarily get to that point, because I think you can also see these really excellent. I'm a musician, and I perform at a very high level, and so it's easy for somebody like with my training level and my ability to get really disheartened. All of these churches that have seemed to have become apostate, yet have these really excellent paid choirs that can sing all of these great works of the faith, whether they believe them or not. You can get down about that, but then you have to think about what Bishop Grote said. And then the main thing is to leave the church better than you found it.
Yeah.
And so that to me is all, and this is the church planting theme, is you just have to have an upward trajectory, and not be satisfied with getting worse. Because if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
That's true.
But not to have this unattainable thing saying, if I can't ever do this, then I won't really be satisfied. But just this idea that we're just improving and we're heading some direction. The great architects of these cathedrals, none of them lived to see it.
Right.
And yet they still found a great reward in that calling, and also that's another gift as well. To be pursuing something that you will never attain is obviously humbling, but it also is very selfless, because you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the 5th or 6th generation, which is, of course, what we're supposed to be doing, in Psalm 78. And so that also can be really spiritually forming for the person who's casting that vision.
It's the
Speaking
old
of, spiritual formation. I've been to churches where I became rather put off, to put it mildly, with music that was this repetitive chorus. Just repetitive chorus, and
7-11 music.
Yes.
7 words 11 times.
So, with all the beauty that we've had at Access traditionally, how did they get so devolved to that state?
I mean, I think it's human
That's
nature.
a whole nother podcast.
It is.
I imagine it is. Yeah.
But try and give us an answer to that one, Andrew.
Well, I mean, I think it's just easier to be lazy. It's easier not to require the best from yourself. A lot of that happened in the 60s, where other reforms of the broader church were taking place. And that's one of the reasons I always tell my Roman Catholic friends that I'm glad that we had our Reformation during the time of Shakespeare instead of the time of Woodstock.
Wow.
But
it's true.
To their credit, they always agree with me. They say, yes, and wouldn't it be nice if we could use your translation? And there may be some that can, but I mean, I think that a lot of the reforms that were made were they were given to a group of people that was not ready to contemplate what that would actually mean.
Yeah.
And so it was a even if these reforms were correct, they were done in a very pastorally insensitive way that really led to a lot of these problematic tendencies to emerge.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Well, you have any last thought or closing question?
One thing that I came across and reading a few years ago when I was first working through Percy Dearmer's Parson's Handbook, he's got the comment when he's talking about the Eucharist. But he says the Kyrie, the Gloria, the Agnus, and the Creed, Sanctus, those are for the people. And so you should select a plain song setting that is singable by them. And I always kind of thought of, oh man, the plain song Gregorian stuff is way too hard. How can this ever be accomplished? But sitting here with you today, I mean, in hearing that, not only is the choir singing it, but people in the congregation are able to reclaim that rich history.
And I would just say,
I just think it's
way
beautiful.
easier to sing than a lot of praise choruses.
It is, yeah.
But people are intimidated first. Like they approach these things with skepticism. They'll open a hymn book because nobody reads music. This has all been lost on most people in the church.
I have a note about that, but I'll get back to that.
But, and please jump in. But what they also don't take into mind is that we're going to be doing this more than once,
Right.
and we're thinking long term for your own spirituality. You've got years to grow into this, and you'd be surprised at how quickly, as Andrew's story was about learning the creed in 3 times, how this gets ingrained in you. But people react. They're very standoffish when it comes to classical hymnody.
I always say that music
books.
Music is the Department of Defense in the church. People can get really, in a lot of places, you might be able to get up in the pulpit and preach Buddhism, and a lot of people won't notice. But if you do the other tune, from the hymnal,
we don't ever do
then
that.
people are coming at you with pitchforks.
Well, and that's the thing, even
And
within
Bach went to jail
Anglicanism.
twice, so
This is true.
I mean, just think about how many classical Anglican churches that will never sing anything other than Marbeck or Willen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much history, and maybe it won't sound perfect the first few times you try another Eucharistic setting, another Mass setting.
Well, I think that
you know, try
and try in a way that will set you up for success.
Yes,
you know.
yeah.
So for instance, if you're trying to learn a new Mass setting, don't drop every single part of it on to your congregation
at once.
Yeah. So we're going to learn a new Mass setting, but we're going to spend a month learning the Kyrie. The rest will be the Marbeck or whatever it is, and then after that, we'll add the Sanctus and
there's a way to do this,
and there's a pastoral way. Now, I think that musically it makes sense to do all of the ones from the same collection.
Sure.
You know, because you want your service to be unified in several ways, but you know, when you're making pastoral decisions, you know, that's a good way to gradually, you know, almost everything done well pastorally is done gradually.
It is incremental.
Incrementally, that's right. About reading music, because a lot of people, yes, they think that they can't read music. The way that I learned how to read music was by sitting in the balcony of the Methodist church growing up from 5 years old, where my parents were singing in the church choir. And they said, Andrew, here's a hymnal, sing along. And so here I am learning, holding the hymnal in my hands. And I'm just looking at this computer code in front of me, noticing that whenever the melody goes up, the notes go up. And when it goes down, it goes down. And also the longer notes take more space horizontally on the page.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just all, even at 5 years old, that's sort of making sure that the ground is fertile. And as soon as I started playing viola, I started in viola in the 4th grade. It was instantaneous that I was able to read this music because the ground was set up for it to sprout very quickly. But also, you know, music notation makes sense. Like I was just saying, unlike words, the only letter that looks like it sounds is the letter O. Right? Maybe the B if you're thinking of it as lips that are about to go apart, but that's a bit of a stretch. One of the sort of the party tricks that I use if people say that they can't read music is I will give them a 1940 hymnal and I'll open it up to, I can't remember if it's 19 or 21, O Little Town of Bethlehem, and it has one tune on one side and the other tune on the other side, and of course the words are exactly the same. So I say, I'm going to sing one of these, you tell me which one I'm singing. And 100% of the time, people tell me the correct version.
Yeah, that's right.
Which means that there's a highly intuitive nature about reading music that we should be very careful with assuming that people can't do it, and we ourselves can't do it. And also, again, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation, the best way to ensure that your children can sing well is by singing the best that you can. You know, children whose dads don't sing.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Children whose dads sing will sing. And so whether, again, will it be perfect? No. But maybe the next generation or the following generation or whatever it is will be. But the action lies with all of us. The impetus to act lies with all of us.
I like that. Mark, anything? Final thought?
Yeah, 2 things. One, you just reminded me of something that Jim Hall, our brewmaster, said recently to a friend of mine who visited St. Benedict's. He said that he loves St. Benedict's because he's in a church where you've got crying babies and singing men. And he said that makes for a healthy church. And I just love that he said that, crying babies and singing men. The other thing I wanted to say, just based on...
definitely better than the other way around.
Singing babies.
Just listening to you guys brought something home to me that I would want to share. This has been my experience, and I just want to share this with any of our listeners who might be struggling with the same thing, where you feel like you've come to a service, it's foreign, you don't know if you can keep up, you don't understand the music, you know it's unfamiliar. I love what Father Templin said. In so many words, you were saying there's more than one way to participate. And sometimes participation means to be present and listen, engage with your heart, let this thing happen around you and just be immersed in it. It's not unlike what people should be doing during a sermon, right? And there's so many times in our services where I don't know the hymn. I don't know it well enough to sing without a hymnal, but I'm at the altar with my hands folded in prayer, and I'm just listening, thinking, this is so beautiful. This is so amazing that we get to be a part of this. So just a word of encouragement to people. Just participate, sometimes just by being present. Open your heart, listen, and let the Spirit and Word of God work on you.
Well, Deacon, do you have any final thoughts?
Not a final thought, but a question. Since you teach students, what is their number one questions or things that they come to you as far as learning?
Well, their students are always full of questions. And I don't know that there's really one that sticks out, but I will say that at the St. Timothy School, everybody is in choir, and everybody past fifth grade is in orchestra playing a stringed instrument, which are really good ways to sort of flank reading music, because reading music, singing is different than reading music playing an instrument. You see an A on the page for a viola, and you just put it on your finger and you pull the bow, and that's an A. Whereas singing, you have to hear an A and then be able to match it. And so it's a different sort of skill. But if you do both of those, then you can really be musically literate. But we think that it's worth everybody doing. So there's no electives. Everybody's in there whether they like it or love it.
Yeah, that's very instructive. I mean, even within the home, hymn singing at home and teaching. Well, Andrew, is there a way for people to get access to any of the settings, or like how would people who are listening that might want to get access to some of these resources?
Well, I brought a box of a bunch more CDs that I'm happy to leave here for anybody who wants to pick them up at St. Benedict's. Also, there's the YouTube channel, there's Spotify, and then there's I think it's on Amazon Music. It's not on Apple Music because they wouldn't let me select classical, and so I just didn't do Apple Music. But you have to be like certified or accredited or something in order to be able to do that. That way you don't get Yanni or somebody like that just pretending to be anyway. And then there's the Kyrial Project, and all this stuff you can find on the YouTube page, is where you can buy various sheet music for your congregation. I'm working on getting printed copies because I think it's important to have things that you don't throw away, because if you throw away things, then that also has implicit theology. We need to hold our prayer books. We need to hold our hymnals. We need to hold our sources of authority. But I'm hoping by year's end we will be able to get those out to various congregations that are interested. There's a regular harmonized edition. There's an organ edition. And then there's also just a melody edition that's written in the plain chant notation. Also, there is, in the summer, July 14th through 17th, I, as well as two other of my organist friends, am going to lead the Cadman Church Music Conference, which is for any interested clergy, choir masters, organists, choristers, or laity that would like to better their church music and their churches by virtue of that. Playing the long game. So hopefully registration for that conference will be up soon. And it would be great to have as many of you there as possible.
And that registration and information is on the Chapel of the Cross website?
It's on the Cadman.
You have your own website?
The Cadman website.
Okay.
And I'm making sure you get that.
We can put these links in there. But for your YouTube channel, is it the Kyrial Project? If somebody wants to find you?
Just Andrew Dittman.
Andrew Dittman? Okay.
Fortunately, Dittman is a pretty uncommon name, so
Dittman.
That's right.
Dittman. Well, this has been illuminating.
Yes.
And
thank you for coming and joining us.
Yeah, this is really wonderful. Thank you for spending a little over an hour with us. And we want to just bless you and your family, your wonderful family, and the ministry that you're doing, not only at the Chapel of the Cross, but across the greater church, and all that you do, especially for the Reformed Episcopal Church. And grateful for what you've always done and supported with St. Benedict's to get us where we're at. Mm-hmm. So, and we definitely will have you back.
Happy to come
do you
back.
have other things you can talk about, or you just talk about the Kyrial?
You know, I could talk about any number of things. You want to talk about the war?
That's going to be a whole other podcast series.
You mentioned Department of Defense, but I thought it was the Department of War now.
Yeah. Well. Anyway, we're going to have you back if you will have us.
Of course,
we'd love to have you. Yeah. And we want to thank you again, everybody, for joining us today on the Everyday Monks, the Parish Podcast of St. Benedict's Anglican Church in Rockwall, Texas.
The Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible, and in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, begotten of his Father before Church, I